So so that goes on with the planning part of a project manager's planning part of the project manager of creating a WBS. Coming into activity level is coming at the breaking the WBS into more activity level is being covered at the schedule, which is number 6 here. Uh, Moving around horizontally on the scope side. So scoping in execution, I mean, basically, they are not. We are not defining the scope execution. It's actually was defined here because again, it comes to something to do with integration because you're executing what is defined in the scope in the main project, and so you will have to access the other sub areas like resources, risks, quality. So that's why it's at the integration layer. The execution part of it is at the integration layer. um, then again, pure scoping, you might have to what is there again at the monitoring part, as a project manager who is doing monitoring. If you are doing some monitoring work as a project role, then again the validating scope will be one of the factors that we'll be doing at, as as monitoring and controlling of the project. So validating scope, again, uh, one thing I have to note is that it's again a UAT in our layman office term. It's is the yes, user acceptance validating the scope and the deliverables. Why it is not at the closing group? We discussed this at the previous stage. I mean, the closed group, what activities that is there. This is more into closing the project, taking a fully closed acceptance document from the customer that the project is formally closed, especially in the government sector, and then reallocating our resources, putting the resources back to the bench if it's a projectized organization, closing all the agreements, and you exiting from the project as a project manager. So that is the closing part of it. Um, but in practice, usually the validating scope almost come to at the closing part of it, because once you are delivered, especially if you are going for a predictive life cycle, not an iterative life cycle. If you are going for a predictive life cycle of the project, then obviously you're validating the scope at the almost at the end. But please note, the closing part of it and the validating part of it is a bit too different. Maybe practically you're doing together almost there in practical terms in Sri Lanka. But then usually in theory they define it as two areas. So validating scope is more into, they take it as you as a controlling. They have defined it in the controlling part of it as monitoring and control, because this is where there can be a lot of change requests coming in because the customer is not satisfied with what is being delivered. So validating scope is formally acceptance of the completed project deliverable. So you deliver the software and now you try to take the and validate it and get it signed it off that the customer is happy with the deliverables. So so the main inputs, obviously, this the requirements management plan. Again, if you can remember, in the previous class, we did the requirements management plan, how the requirements will be taken and how it will be validated, so that the how factors are inbuilt into the governance part of it, the scope and the requirement plans. And the scope baseline, we just concluded, that is the baseline. And if there's a dispute of the deliverables, the customer is not happy with what has been delivered, and now you're asking him to sign off and then getting acceptance. If he's not happy, then obviously you will have to refer back your scope and the baseline. Other project documents, the quality reports, and any requirement documentation, you will have to, if the customer is disputing, I never asked this function, I never asked this function to get I never asked this computation, this text computation is wrong in the ERP system. Then you go back to your traceability matrix and see who said that text computation, and then you can say your accountant has told us this, and this is how we develop and we programmed in that way. And it's also in the scope statement, scope baseline. So You may have to trace back and refer back to your original requirement documentation in a dispute and the traceability matrix. Verified deliverables is your quality deliverables, I mean your QA process. So now we are going to your customer with the product to get sign off, and obviously your QA process, the output of your QA process, the verified deliverables, your internal QA process of your organization will be the verified deliverables. You're taking to your customer, the verified deliverables will be the deliverables that you're taking to your customer. Right. So once again, same things. Um, uh, the documentation, the traceability to find the links of the requirements, validated deliverables for the quality control process of your internal quality control process, and sometimes you might as a project manager to have the performance data with you. Sometimes you are asking your customer to sign off subject to certain non-conformities. Maybe by the time you're going to your customer to show the deliverables, by that time you usually will know that certain areas are excluded from this deliverable and is coming in another pack, another patch, or another software drop. So sometimes you might come up with the non-conformities that or the degree of compliance with the requirements. You might have that information before you go to your customer's table. So we all know, since we have practical experience in working in organizations, so the customers will start reviewing the product, and he will start using test data, and the inspection will go on. If it is a product, I mean, if it's a non-IT product, then of course there can be some other product acceptance criteria. I'm not aware of much on how the construction acceptance goes through by the customer, but then maybe some certain certifications that they take off. Maybe a data center project, maybe the fire rated certifications that they take by the contractors, 2-hour fire rated, and they wanted a fire rated vault again, perimetering the data center. So those product acceptance criteria may be there. Inspection, sometimes inspection would do, sometimes core UAT might have to take place. So it's a group decision making again. Sometimes, especially in government organizations, one fellow will never take a decision and sign the UAT. So it's a group decision making, and sometimes there can be a committee that is involved in signing off the deliverables. And you will have, as a project manager, you will have to convince the group that and satisfy the group who is making the decision for the final sign off to get it done. So think practically, I mean, nothing rocket science. Definitely you are done in your experience these things. Just we are actually plugging up into theory. So the output will be obviously the formally signed, approved acceptance by the customer. There can be formal documentation, and obviously we sign certain UAT document saying that this will be signed, acknowledging the customer's formal acceptance. And these documents will be obviously transferred to the closed phase of the project, which I spoke to. Sometimes everything get backfired and the customer is not happy, and sometimes the customers might sign off the acceptance with a footnote saying that subject to certain these amendments. Okay, I will sign it off, but subject to these amendments. So backfiring will definitely will constitute a change request coming in, and if the customer is not satisfied, and you might develop your case. No, that is what the scope said, and that is what you agreed, and customer will say no, that is not the thing. So end of the day, you as a project manager, I mean, with your leadership skills and with the convincing skills, either you try to trade it off or sometimes you will have to get a correction done with your team. Maybe there's a costing, so that's why maybe the customer agrees that yes, what we are told is wrong in the scope statement, but now that tax computation is wrong, but this is the correct tax computation, so please get this done, incorporate into your software package. Well, the customer agrees that yes, it is a misfire from their side, and then that's why it has to go into the integrated change control process. Integrated change control process, where you as a project manager has to fire back to your project management hierarchy, or your management, saying that yeah, this is a CR, this is a change request, but then it's a costable change request. I mean, it's a chargeable change request, and the customer agrees, and so there's a cost impact, there's a time impact. That's why we have to go to the integrated level, time impact. Or sometimes you might have to take more resources to get delivered. So there can be a number of things happening at that stage. So as I told you previously also, work performance information is generated from, especially information is generated from the controlling process. How much of, how much of change requests that we have done, what is the degree of the deliverable statuses, what is their progress. So you will be generating a lot of information for your steering committee meetings from this process. And you can say that we had 10 change requests. 2 of them are chargeable, 3 of them are our issues. There are some bugs, so we are changing them internally. Our understanding was not correct, so you are going to trade it off between your customer and you. So there are a lot of work information that is getting delivered at this process that can be generated in stakeholder communications when you're communicating to your stakeholders. Right.